one of the real common things is a lot of autoimmune disorders that the kids have, all kinds of genetic birth defects. The thing that, like in my son's case, they said for your son to get it was a 1 in 50,000 chance. It's a 1 in 50,000 chance, but I've met several people who have kids that were uprange who have the exact same thing, that it was the 1 in 50,000 chance. And in our case, what I find is probably 1 in 500 instead of 1 in 50,000. So there's a lot of things like that we start to go through when we find out, as the guys are talking just through the weekend, that people's wives, girlfriends were having miscarriages, more than one. Like in my case, my wife had 3. One of the guys that served uprange, his wife had 7. These are horrible things to experience. And the other thing that we found at this barbecue was that some of the guys we worked with are dead.
Hello, and thank you for joining me today here on the Ultra Free podcast, which is brand new. We're just here to piss people off nonstop, talking about reality.
Truth hurts.
Huh?
Truth hurts.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm pissed. I'm pissed off today. I revisited your story, which I have been following. Watching Natasha Zuvis cover your whole journey once you started speaking out after your barbecue discovery, and just watching some of it again this morning, I'm like, Jesus Christ, man, it's infuriating. And I guess the reason why you're probably like, why is this actress even, whatever. I don't really act anymore. I feel like all I do is talk to people that have been ignored or sidelined. I've been dealing with some kids that are veterans that went through the last 4 years, but they're injured, and being told that they're crazy, that, they're trying to write these things off as psychological issues right now. And I'm sure I don't need to explain to you why they're injured. A lot of it is just this government trickle down of absolutely no transparency, just zero accountability. So you, of course, your story was like, oh, Jesus. I mean, I know this has been going on forever, and I'm sure that there have been countless people who have never, ever had a voice and never even tried to speak out about certain things. But here you are, you're going for it. I wish you could speak for all these kids that are lined up that are not well at this point, but it's a different topic. Yours is super aggravating knowing you got as far as you got. So I'm going to back up and ask you to this is not going to be a formal interview like Natasha's interviews. Those are, I have a box of tissues here just in case you make me cry, Dave.
Well, that's always the goal.
Yeah. Your story, watching you and your friends explain how it's been for the last, I don't know how many years for you guys, but you'll tell us and the listeners. But back when you joined the military, what was your mission? What was your initial intent when you were a young man going into the military?
So I joined up. I was in the Air Force from 1983 to 1987 or 1989, and I was uprange, and I'll explain that. But I was uprange from 83 to 87, and uprange is I was stationed in Las Vegas, and come to find out, you go through this process. You don't know what you're doing. You don't know anything about where you're going, what you're doing at all. And what we find out is we're going to live out in the desert on the days that we work, about 140 miles north of Las Vegas. We find out that we're going to fly back and forth to work. We go up for our work week, which was typically 4 days, sometimes longer. And then we fly home for our weekend. And it was super cool. You had a top secret security clearance. You know, you couldn't tell anybody what you did. When my wife and I got married, she didn't know anything beyond I was a cop in the Air Force. Beyond that, she didn't know where we went. She didn't know when we were coming home. Didn't know anything about what we did during the day. She would ask how work went, and I said it was fine because that was as far as that conversation could go. And we get out there and we see things, and it's it's super cool. Like one of the things that we can talk about, the first thing you see when you land up there is an entire Russian Air Force, which is not what you expected to find at a U.S. military base. And there are literally Russian MiG fighter jets lined up. Which
You wait, can I just back up? And you flew to work every day? Like, were you
that
on
we
that
used
Janet airline thing?
no, so that flies up where I worked. It flew up to civilians. Okay, we would see that come in and out. It would fly to where we worked, but we flew up on something called Key Airlines, which was another chartered civilian airline that would fly us from Nellis Air Force Base to work. And at the time, it was a 727. It was the exact same as any other airline that you would get on. And that's how we would go back and forth.
So you weren't at Nellis. You were
We were way
Nellis
out in the
is,
middle of nowhere.
and that's what's considered. Is it considered Area 51 or is that Tonopah? What is that? Is that a name?
So
Tonopah?
yeah, the name is Tonopah, which is a town
Tonopah.
northwest of Vegas. What people call Area 51, it's really called the Nevada Test and Training Range. And to give people an idea, like people look at Area 51 and they think, well, it's just a spot out in the desert, like just a thing. What Nevada Test and Training Range, NTTR, is the whole thing is an airspace and a ground space. The airspace being the restricted airspace is like the size of the state of Maryland. The ground space where nobody can get to is the size of Rhode Island. It's big. And this is where the Air Force develops all of its next generation weapons. The airplane that doesn't exist yet exists there. The technology that doesn't exist yet, it exists there. That's where they develop everything. The big thing when I was there was the stealth fighter, the F-117. And that was developed and made operational, and we did what we did. And it wasn't even acknowledged to exist until a year after I left.
You guys were dealing with that particular. I mean, I know you guys are data masked and all of that stuff. We'll get to that later, but you were dealing with that stealth. I mean,
Right. And
80,000 feet into the sky. Is that true? It passes the sound barrier, speed of light, like all of
no,
these
it's
things.
not it's not that it doesn't do those type of things. It is really just it's a tactical bomb. It's considered a fighter, but it doesn't have like an F-15 has guns and missiles and all these different things on it. It's a it's fairly simplistic in what it does, but what it does very well because it can go put a bomb on a stop sign and nobody will ever know it was there until the bomb blows up.
Wow.
So that's what the technology does, and that's what we were really there to protect. Was not that a lot of people thought, because we would hear it on the news and whatnot, that people thought the stealth technology existed. Nobody knew how to create it or to stop it. So that's what the secrets really were, was what makes this widget work. And it worked. It's proven itself over and over. And now all the airplanes that are created have this type of technology. That was just really the first one. Um, so you go up there and you deal with all this stuff, and it's the greatest job in the world because you're just doing things nobody knows about, that nobody sees, like little things like we were never allowed to live on base. So for somebody like me who's 18 years old, who's right out of high school, goes through training, goes to your first duty station, you can expect to live on base for the next few years in essentially a college dormitory. They didn't want us around the other people. So we were instantly told we had to move off base, which was quite the privilege. And it was very, very different. So I spent 4 years there. left and I went to Main Base Nellis, which is like where the rest of the military works. And um, while I was out of the assignment for a year, it was disclosed that the stealth fighter existed. And when you leave the range, you basically leave everybody behind. There was no social media and internet and things like that. And a lot of the people that worked in that world of secrecy, they stayed in that world of secrecy. Where I got out, I went to college and started a family and did all that. A lot of people stayed in that world. So you really lost contact with everyone.
So you were a kid when you were there.
Yeah, I went up. I was just before I turned 19 years old. So it was really mind blowing. You grow up really, really fast because you're given a level of responsibility that people question that I even went there at 19 years old. They're like, well, they wouldn't have a 18, 19-year-old kid doing that. But we did it.
Were you guys
And it
doing
was a,
security there? Was it
I
a
was a
security
cop.
detail?
Yeah. And there wasn't a lot of us. It's not a big place as far as number of people or anything, but that's what we did. We were the security for the base. We checked people in and out and did patrols, and if an alarm went off for something, the rat went running across the hangar floor or whatever it was, that was our job. Our job was to make sure nobody got there, and we were successful. And then fast forward, what starts to create everything is this barbecue that Natasha talked about. It's guys found me on Facebook. We started finding one another. We're going to have a reunion. Well, we decided to have the reunion in Las Vegas, which is where I live, because one of our old aircraft is on display out at Nellis, literally up on a stick that's just a static display. So we want to go out there and we're going to take our picture with the aircraft and get together for a long weekend. So on the Friday, we typically do it like on was it Columbus Day weekend or Veterans Day weekend, and Friday's the fly-in day, and Monday's the go-home day. So we have activities from Friday night to Sunday night. So it's Friday afternoon. Some of the guys have flown in town. We're sitting in my backyard, literally just drinking and catching up because I haven't seen any of these. This is like spring 2015, and I haven't seen any of these guys since 1987. So there's some catching up. We've all grown old and lost our hair and put on a few pounds and, done what we do. At the time I'm like becoming a grandpa here shortly. So we're getting caught up. And one of the guys, Randy, who serves on our board now, he asked the question if anybody had a tumor, which when you haven't seen guys in 30 years, it's not the first thing to come up in conversation. So he asked, and I replied back to him, and I said, yeah, I said, I've got a bunch, but I had a big one on my back. The doc said it was like the size of a grapefruit that they had to remove because it was getting uncomfortable. It wasn't like painful, but it was uncomfortable. And with that, six of the eight guys in my backyard at the time, including myself, there was eight of us, six guys say, I've got tumors too. The guy that asked the question had one that looked just like the way mine looked before it was removed in almost exactly the same spot. Well, that's odd. And my thing when I went to college was statistics and economics. I like the number side of everything. And as everybody says, well, six out of eight of us, I'm sitting there. My first thought goes to, I've never had anybody ask this question. I've never heard this in any kind of conversation, but 75% of us have this problem. And we all know the nexus. We all worked at the same spot. That's our one connection to one another. And then one of the guys that said he didn't have one, he said his son was born with a tumor. So I then replied back and said, my oldest son was born with something called neurofibromatosis, which is a genetic condition where tumors grow on nerve endings. And it creates all kinds of complications, various complications, but can cause all kinds of problems, including things like blindness, because tumors will grow on the optic nerves. Or in my son's case, he has a brain tumor that's there. It's not like a cancerous tumor, but it's a mass that's there that has to be watched. And it causes neurological problems, it causes learning problems, causes all kinds of stuff. And it's not curable. It's something that you live with forever because what I learned was that this exposure that we experience on the range changes your chromosome, it damages your DNA, and the chromosomal changes that we experience up there are irreversible. It's that, and it's forever. So you start passing on to your kids your damaged chromosome, which manifests itself in many of our children with different things. Like one of the real common things is a lot of autoimmune disorders uh, that the kids have, um, all kinds of genetic birth defects. The thing that, like in my son's case, they said for your son to get it was a 1 in 50,000 chance. It's a 1 in 50,000 chance, but I've met several people who have kids that were uprange who have the exact same thing, that it was the 1 in 50,000 chance. And in our case, what I find is probably 1 in 500 instead of 1 in 50,000. So there's a lot of things like that we start to go through, and we find out, as the guys are talking just through the weekend, that people's wives, girlfriends were having miscarriages, more than one. In my case, my wife had 3. One of the guys that served up range, his wife had 7. And these are horrible things to experience. And the other thing that we found at this barbecue was that some of the guys we worked with are dead. At the time, I'm 50 years old. We shouldn't be dying. I find out that my OJT supervisor, on the job training guy, is a cop when I was up range. He died at like 33 years old with 7 and 9-year-old sons. He died from a massive heart attack, which is something we found that is common, where somebody who's perfectly healthy, has no known health issue, just drops dead. And as I continue to research this over the next several years, I start finding things out, like the ultimate piss you off is when you find out the government knew this problem existed. They put it in writing, and they said in an 80-page document, the last paragraph of the executive summary, they said the benefit to national security outweighs the future environmental liability. So the range must continue. And you're like, wow. I sent that to a couple of my buddies, and I said, read this to see if you're reading what I'm reading. And everybody read the same thing. And that document was dated 4 years before they built my base. So my base didn't even exist. They find out what's there, and then they build it.
So that
So it's
so so that was the nuclear testing site,
correct.
one of them.
Correct. And there's like 900 and almost that I know of, almost 950 tests that took place on NTTR in this area where the ground itself is restricted. And there's multiple locations out there where people work. They all have the same contamination. And the first test that was done out there was 1951. The last test was 1992. Another location where a lot of people work was built in 1955. So they were there while the tests were going on. We were there while tests were still going on. They didn't stop the test till 92. I left in 87. And the other thing that we find out is the main radioactive component that's used in nuclear bombs has a half-life of 24,110 years. So in other words, the time it takes for, say, something the size of a softball to shrink to just half its mass is 24,000 years. I jokingly tell people we'll have another ice age before this stuff is all gone, but we send people there every day still.
I mean, there's so much talk of radioactive materials all over the place, but where you were, I mean, I don't know if that was, is that the area where they dismantled? They also, I know they were testing, but they also dismantled a few of them. I don't know, was it called was it Project Roller Coaster or some? I can't even
Yeah,
remember.
roller coaster took place right outside the main gate of where I worked.
A really quick break to say we're glad you found the Ultra Free podcast and hope you're enjoying this episode. A great way to support the podcast is to head over to the Ultra Free website to buy merch. Link in the show notes below. We have cool hats and hand-screened t-shirts, and we'd love to see you in them. So buy a few. Take photos and tag us on your socials to spread the Ultra Free vibes. Like and subscribe and leave comments when you have them. And remember, we don't need to be right. We just need to be free. Ultra Free. Now back to the episode.
I mean, you could walk in an hour from the front gate of my work location to where the actual test took place.
It's like,
And there was multiple tests.
so it's basically like, okay, well, now we have all this area that's free over here, Chernobyl, and we're just going to put you guys on it. And like, there's so much other space to be utilized in America. Why use that space is also, I don't even know if there's an answer to that question, but I'm sure you ask
There
it.
is.
Oh, there
There-
is. Okay.
So there's two things. One, it's the least populated area of the United States. This land that's out there. It's really desolate. I mean, it's very, very arid. There's extreme weather. You know, we would go from wind chill factors of 40 below in the winter to over 100 degrees in the summer. So you have all kinds of stuff. And the other thing, and I don't remember the exact wording, but it was decided way back in the 50s when they started doing all this stuff out there, that the people that lived out there were kind of the low end, less educated part of society, that they were really considered disposable. You know, if you're going to make somebody sick, those people are better than the people in LA or somewhere
Oh,
else.
God.
And that's things that are in reports that they put in writing too.
I've
That
seen
were
it.
and today it's just unimaginable that somebody would say that.
It's infuriating.
Yeah, and it wasn't like, in times we've had racial issues in our country and those debates still exist. This wasn't anything like that. It just blanketly said, well, if they're dumb enough to live out there, we're dumb enough to poison them. And that's what they did. That was really their logic. And they said, and there's not a lot of people there anyway, so who cares?
And then to send
And we
you
need to
guys
do
there.
Yeah. And then after one study, and I'm sure that there was others, but the one study that I found that was before they built my duty station is they said nobody should be out here. If somebody goes out there, it should just be for a limited time to limit exposure. And then they go further in the report and they said, but the juice is worth the squeeze. We slept there. We showered there. Our food was cooked there. Yeah. So literally, like they said, the groundwater was contaminated. So our food was cooked in it. We showered in it. We drank it. I had somebody come to me and say, well, you don't absorb radioactive material if you drink it because your body will expel it, right? We're going to go to the bathroom. That's a true statement. I think they're entirely right. The part that they don't include is plutonium's the third most toxic heavy metal. So you absorb it that way. You absorb the toxicity of the heavy metal, not the radiation maybe, but the heavy metal. So you're getting hit with with the radiation from your surroundings, and then you're drinking stuff that has a toxic heavy metal in it, along with other things. Because the other thing to realize too is it's not just the radiation. This has been a bombing range since World War II. Nellis existed and was created in World War II, and the fighter jets that were training out of Nellis would go out there and do what they do. And in the town of Tonopah, there's an airport that used to be a bomber training base in World War II, and they would go drop bombs out there and practice all that. So you have all those things. There's been rocket motors and missile testing and everything you could possibly imagine out there. And then you have the same stuff that every other military base has with the jet fuels and asbestos and different things that everybody else in the military really gets exposed to. But then you've got these bonus things like stuff left over from conventional chemical weapons, weapon testing, from nuclear bombs, from all these different things. And so your entire environment is contaminated. And to give you an idea too, the NTTR works on an EPA waiver. They don't have to conform to any standard.
Yeah, and you guys I mean, I think part of the issue with you guys, and I'm going to get this wrong, so you're going to correct me and and then explain to the listeners. Um, the reason why you've been fighting against this is for your benefits, and is there some sort of a discrepancy between the Department of Energy and their sort of benefits? I can't remember. Is it? I wrote it down somewhere. The EE
Yep.
whatever thing. But then you guys are not eligible to be protected under the Department of Energy, are you? Because you were military, so now you don't. How did that whole thing end up working once you started trying to fight against this thing?
So what I found out about that was this, that in the beginning, when this legislation was being talked about, it's called the EEOICPA, Energy Employees Occupational Illness Protection Act, I think is what it all stands for. But in this, we just refer to it as EOIPA. So in this EOIPA bill, when it was first being discussed, it was going to take care of Department of Defense and Department of Energy. The Department of Defense then requested that all reference to the Department of Defense be removed. And I haven't found the documents about that, but I have found people that were in the meeting that the Department of Defense walked into and told the senators to remove that language. They would take care of their own, which they had no intention of doing. And
Why?
that's hindsight tells us that. And the senators, all right, well, if you guys are going to take care of it, you take care of it your way. We're going to take care of these Department of Energy. And then the language was written specifically limiting so that only Department of Energy employees and contractors could file a claim. Then President Clinton signs an executive order that reinforces that only the Department of Energy can do this. And I talked to attorneys like the Camp Lejeune attorneys and things like that. And they all said, this executive order and stuff, it blocks you from doing anything as far as a lawsuit. And there's other laws on the books that since you're military, you're not going to get anywhere. They
Why?
said your only avenues would be legislative or get another executive order. Well, I couldn't. When I started this, President Biden was president, and I don't know how to call him up and ask him for that. But the thing I do know is I understand the legislative process because I've been politically involved and I know how it works. I'm not saying I'm an expert, but I know how it works. So I went down that path, formed an organization, called a congressman that I had access to here in Nevada, and I said, "Hey, look, this is our issue." I explained it to him. He lives up in Reno. He was shocked. He didn't understand it, and he's a military veteran as well. And I said, "I need somebody to sponsor a bill for me so we can start a conversation in Congress." He agreed to do it, and that's how we got that started. Because back to the UAPA bill, they blocked us from doing anything. And then the DoD doesn't recognize the, so let me back up. The Department of Energy says NTTR is an area of contamination. It's a Superfund site. Where we worked is, I've read different stories and it depends how you look at it, but it's the most contaminated place on earth. It's worse than Chernobyl because we have all these other chemicals on top of it. So we're blocked on the EEOI CPA, and the DOE says this is an area of contamination, and the DoD says, no, it isn't. And then the DoD goes further and says, we've never had military stationed out there.
Wow.
So for us to get all of our VA benefits, we have to prove that we were there and prove the exposure. We can't do either one.
When you guys were kids, did you know that you were going into what would become data masked? Is that what they call?
It, we didn't know that term, but what we did know is that we were going to an area where you had to have a top secret security clearance. You were never going to be able to talk about it. And this was a lifelong commitment, basically, that you're going to go do something classified. There's things you'll never talk about. And that's true. There's still things we will not talk about.
You shouldn't have those in your ears either, Dave,
Yeah.
because nothing
Um,
wireless anymore.
well, I read the instructions that said get earbuds. So that's exactly what I
Oh,
did.
no. Oh, you could have had the things.
So I had no idea what was going on. Our bosses didn't know. And to that end, when I started this, I was a buck sergeant. I was an enlisted guy in the service. And some of the other guys, my peers, my friends, were all the same. They're all enlisted guys. And some of them would say, well, you know what? Um, maybe the officers knew and they didn't tell us. Well, that doesn't make sense because they went there too. If they thought it was that bad, they'd send maybe the enlisted guys there, but they're not volunteering to go. And then as I started to tell guys, I said, most of the commanders, the commanders at our site, they're all dead. They wouldn't have wanted to go there if they knew their outcome was going to be when they were in their 50s, 60s, whatever, that they were going to die.
So you were you weren't there as long as a lot of these men were, even a lot of your friends that were at the barbecue, like the gentleman who has, I mean, his vocal cords, his
Yeah,
tongue,
Robert.
yeah, all of, I mean, say all of their names that were at your barbecue with you. That I can't even believe hearing them all speak, um, especially Robert, and seeing what he's been
Robert
through.
was up there about 20 years around NTTR, working up there. He was in the military, got out, went there as a contractor, but he was a DOD contractor. So therefore, he doesn't get the benefits, which we're going to fix. And the crazy thing, like with Robert, he is the most positive person you could hope to meet. He's,
I could tell.
and you look at him, and I've told him, it's like, I can't understand how you could be like,
He's like, I'm
that.
alive.
Yeah.
I'm alive.
And that's the only thing he cares about. And I think he's had his 7th cancer now.
Unbelievable. He's a warrior. So, I mean, you guys are still your warriors. I mean, that's what I always tell these kids that are VAs now. I'm like, it looks like you guys are still, you're out there fighting something else now. You're just doing it from behind your computer at this point. Because some of these kids can't walk and stuff like that.
And so for me, it was, I know how this process works. I'm not going to violate my NDA and disclose something I shouldn't. But that NDA shouldn't be what has stopped us. And it, up until the point that I came out, it had stopped us. It stopped everybody from ever saying anything. And I'm like, we don't need to be that afraid of our government. Don't say the things that you know you can't say. Everybody knows what those are. And it's really not about what we did. It's about where we did it. It's about what happened before we ever got there. It's about some of the things that took place while we were there, because there was still testing. There's other things, but it's not about what we did. It's about where we did it. And it's about the fact the government knew and decided, yeah, we can make a living number of people sick like this, kill them off, make their kids have birth defects, but it's for the greater good. So
Who
we're
was in
good.
charge at that point of the Department of Defense?
When they started doing this out there, it was in the 50s.
Well, that would have been
When my site
Eisenhower.
was being built, that was under Carter.
It was Carter.
And everybody, I'm not going to say, I think every president has known what goes on out there. But my true belief is that the Department of Energy buried the information about how toxic everything was. They hid it. And the Department of Defense goes, well, this is a great area to do something. And I don't know at what point anybody in the DOD put 2 plus 2 together. But I also believe there was a point that they did, and they said, well, we're so far down this road now. What do? We've spent billions of dollars on facilities and infrastructure and creating these places that people can't find. I mean, you can go on Google Maps and you can find where we work, but you're not going to get there. You're not getting to the front gate of any of these places
Are they still
because it's
working out of there? Are there still
100%.
people?
There's still planes that fly up there every day.
And do these kids know? Because I've seen the intake. I saw the forms for the intake to, I guess, to be at Nellis, and what it looks like and all that. And I'm like, people are still, I mean, I understand that they're the outskirts and stuff, but that actual interior, and knowing your story, hearing it, I mean, it's out there.
We don't get much coverage in Vegas. We've had 17,000 news stories done about us in print, on TV, on radio, on podcasts, on internet stuff. We've been in all kinds of publications. I can count on one hand how many times we've been in the news in Vegas.
Really?
It's not the story. It's not the Chamber of Commerce type story, right? It's not the tourism board doesn't want people to talk about it. The nuclear testing used to be a big tourist draw in the 50s. There was literally atomic
Weird.
tourism.
So strange. So
Yeah.
nihilistic.
But now it's not something that's really talked about. There's the Atomic Museum here in Vegas, and they kind of glorify what took place out there as these scientific achievements. They were, but that doesn't make it good.
No.
And so it's kind of glorified. And I mean, think about this. So there's a bill, it was called RECA, Radiation Exposure Compensation Act. It's also known as the Downwinders Bill. So when they used to do these above ground tests, the radiation would go where they didn't want it to go. And in parts of the very northwest corner of Arizona, some of eastern Nevada, southwestern Utah, there's cancer clusters. And it's because of the testing that took place, because they were literally downwind, so the radiation was carried to these areas. So they compensated them. $50,000 was the typical compensation, which I don't know who thought that was a great amount for giving people cancer, but that's what they give them. Now, last year, Josh Hawley, who's a senator out of Missouri, fought to get that reinstated, and he won. He basically blackmailed everybody in Congress, said you're going to do this because some of the weapons development and stuff took place in Missouri, and there's people in his home state that are sick like others.
I dig that guy.
So he went and did what he did, and he kind of bucked everybody, but
Yeah.
they needed his vote. Eventually they caved. Here's something crazy about when they caved. They included Mojave County, Arizona, which is Kingman and Bullhead City, in this huge area for cancer clusters. So now think about this. If you took a ruler, right? So if you drew a straight line from where they did the testing in Nevada to Kingman, it goes right over the center of Las Vegas. Las Vegas isn't included. The reason it isn't included is there's too many people that live there, and it would cost too much money to take care of those. So they just simply don't acknowledge. It doesn't take a rocket scientist, because radiation doesn't have GPS and say, well, we're going to cross the Colorado River now. Now we can hit the ground.
No shit.
And so they play these games, and it's always about money. And I get it. Money's important. Everybody, even the government, to some extent, has limited resources. Okay. But so because of not wanting to spend the money, you completely disavow what happened to an entire city because it's too many people. It's too expensive. And they don't want to talk about it because at the same time, I mean, I'm a real estate broker by day in Vegas. People moving to Vegas is good for my business. I live here. And so they don't want that talked about in the press. But the other thing that people need to realize, because of this testing, Princeton University, they did a study to see where the radiation went to over a certain time frame, on and on. It was just about the above ground testing. Everywhere in America has been affected by the radiation. The place of least radiation where it traveled to is the Olympic Peninsula up in Washington State. Everywhere else it's traveled to, we just happened to work at the epicenter of where it was. And so nobody can really get away from it.
So
But
why do they exclude I mean, I've heard you talk about how easy a fix it would be for what you guys want. You're not your group of people, it's not a lot. It's not it really you guys aren't a huge number of people for and
correct,
you're the invisible enemy is what is the name of your organization, right?
correct.
Um I know when you started interviewing with Natasha that you were a lot more hopeful. I know you're still hopeful. I know that I know I listened to you speak after the administration changed. At this point, I am almost convinced that there might have been more leverage in Congress before. And believe me, like I had all this great hope for this new administration. I really did, especially for the kids that I've been talking to in the military, all of that sort of stuff for all the vets. I think, something that really shook everybody in the last 4 years, even lifelong, I guess I would have been considered a crazy liberal myself. Um, but seeing how veterans and frontline workers and the military, how everybody just started to get this really bad rap in the last 4 years. And a lot of us were really like, wait, hold on a minute. Hell no. Like, I'm never going to turn my back on people that are protecting us and protecting our country. And then I think the realization in the last 4 years that the country is not protecting its own people. Our own government hasn't been protecting its own people, including the military, including all the frontline workers. And it's been definitely crazy, feels like a crazy psychological operation right now, but down to the basics of it, just the very basic requirements of just getting through, little pockets where damage has been done, especially yours, where it wasn't this overarching thing where a lot of people were getting hurt. But when you explain it the way you explain it, yes, maybe the whole state is being affected, and many other states are being affected by radiation and all of that sort of activity. But with you guys trying to get this done through Congress, which seems like you have better luck with Congress than you do with the actual administration all the way up at the top. Like, why? Is it? And I've heard you say it's an embarrassment, but why now? I mean, this was another administration. They don't have to take responsibility for the issues and the mistakes that others have made. They can just make it right. God knows there are people in this administration that love a good, pat on the back for a job well done, especially for the military. I mean, we all thought that that was going to be a huge change, that a lot of the vets would have been cared for differently. What do you think?
So I I get what you're saying, but here's what I've learned. I think the people that get elected to office, for the most part, they all want to do the right thing. But there is this beast that lives in Washington, D.C., that is the bureaucrat, is the people. There's a line in a movie that I think is so appropriate to what goes on today. And it was My Big Fat Greek Wedding.
Oh my
Mo-
God.
The mother and daughter are sitting in the hallway, and the daughter's frustrated because of the father. The mother looks to the daughter and says, "Your father may be the head of the family, but I'm the neck that turns it." Right?
Oh my God. I love that you just used that analogy.
And so, but here's the thing. So there's this level of bureaucrat that has been in DC forever. They're the ones who inform the elected officials of what they want the elected official to know and what to believe. And they have a status quo that they want to maintain that supports their career. It doesn't support the veteran. It doesn't support the government. It doesn't support the voter. It supports them. The biggest resistance that I got, for example, a year ago, just about a year ago, I was on a Zoom call like this with multiple members that are like undersecretary level, assistant secretary of defense in the Pentagon. The highest ranking guy that was in there, who's like just a couple people down from Hegseth, got it and was supportive. A lady below him that kind of would run the area that could help us was incredibly anti what we were doing. It's like, why are you rocking the apple cart? And then flat out lied to us. All right, we're going to do this and we're going to get back to you on this. No, they don't. You go into a black hole. And every time I talk to people, I come to the same conclusion that there is, and there's more conspiracies on things and whatnot, but there's something called senior executive services, something that Jimmy Carter created. There's like 7,500 people in this. And in my opinion, if we ever want change, they should just all be gone because they're the neck that controls the head of everything. And if they don't want it changed, it's not going to get changed because they're the ones who then get the job of fixing it. They're the ones that gets delegated to. And I don't believe they have, there's a bunch of people in those positions that have any desire to fix it. So I think that's a problem. I present it to Congress like this. This isn't the mess you created, but like you said, it's not their fault, but it's now on your plate. My job is to give you no other choice but to handle it. And I will do whatever it takes to whatever end to make sure you can't duck and cover and hide from this. And so that's how I view my job. I will make it incredibly uncomfortable for you to ignore me.
So you're going to keep fighting. I mean, you don't care that this last bout. I mean, so I
Oh, no.
remember with Natasha, you had that, you were doing that interview at the Hill. You were walking over to DC. You were walking into the White House that day. I don't know what was
I
that.
did.
That was once Trump was in office.
Yeah, and it was in December, I think like the 1st of December, sometime right around Thanksgiving. And I went from that interview to one of our political consultants. We've got an amazing group in DC, huge lobbying firm that represent us pro bono. And I left Natasha and walked around the corner to the White House and went in there and started having meetings with people. And it went well. One of the disappointing things was the main person that we met with that day, the most influential person that we met with, 2 weeks later quit. We don't know why or what happened or whatever, but that was our main connect there. And we met with other people and we have received more support from them. We've received more support from the Pentagon. But in our last efforts with the NDAA, National Defense Authorization Act, the bill that authorizes and funds the military each year, we got some language included all the way right up to the end. And from the best information I can gather, it was the Speaker of the House that killed us. And we know he single-handedly had the ability to make sure that this stuff we had in there passed. And we had the votes. If we were to have a vote today in Congress on our issue, we pass. Hands down, we pass. But you have to get through all the stupid rules and games and the leadership and the political posturing to get there. That said, we have a new bill that's getting ready to come out We were hoping it was going to come out a couple of weeks ago. That's a new, improved, better, smarter version of what we've been working on that I'm hopeful is going to pass. And it's going to be bipartisan. We're already getting, the bill's not even out yet, and we're getting people from both sides and very influential people from both sides. It looks like that's going to sign on to this. So that's a great thing. I 100% believe we will win. There isn't,
Okay.
there,
That's good.
and I suck at losing, and it's the right thing. And if I have to embarrass the hell out of anybody, so be it. I really don't care. And I've told some, I said, look, we're a charity. I can't take political sides. So I don't care who you are. If you come out against us, I'll make sure everybody in your district knows you don't support veterans, that the government knowingly made ill.
Hell yeah.
This is on your plate. I dare you to say we're wrong.
So,
Because I have nothing to lose.
But are they continuously just trying to prove that you were not there because your presence is data masked and all of this stuff? So it didn't happen. You weren't there. There was no. There was no. I mean, it's common knowledge that it was a nuclear test site. So
It's in every history book.
yeah. I mean, there's so many stories about that particular spot in the world that I believe are, I mean, I you could call me crazy. I still believe the Bob Lazar story stuff. Maybe that, I won't even touch on that. But like, I believe that, one thing I learned in the last 4 years is that we have been lied to repeatedly, and it's not going to stop. And that's what Ultra Free is about. Is this is like, if they're not going to do anything and there's going to be zero accountability at all times, then all we have left is each other. And we need to figure that out. We need to figure that out quickly too.
People need to understand how much power they actually have. When I go out and I speak, I tell people I'm nobody from somewhere. I'm one of 330, 340 million people. There is no sensible argument, if you will. There is no reason I should have a couple of bills in Congress. When I started this, I have no influence there. And now we have an incredible amount of influence there. And anybody can really do that. The problem that we have, that you get to, is people don't. They're afraid of it. They think they won't matter. Their vote doesn't matter. And they don't do their own research to find out truth. No news station gives you all the truth. Partly because every person has a bias, and that bias comes out. And the stations, Fox News, I watch Fox News all the time. They 100% have a bias.
Yeah, I'm over
And
it.
and people need to understand they're there. I don't care what major news network, MS Now or Fox or any of them, they're there for ratings and to sell advertisement and to make money. That's their job. There's nowhere in that description that says be truthful and honest at all times and unbiased. Natasha, I think, who's been our best advocate publicly, is like a unicorn, because she just wants the truth.
Yeah.
And one of the things I want to say though before it's gone is I want people to understand what the purpose of this is. It isn't about me getting a benefit or not getting a benefit. And for most of folks that served up there, it's really less about us. Here's the problem. And the problem is this: if we can't service connect our issues, for example, I have left brain atrophy. I've talked about this before. Left side of my brain is beginning to shrink. It's a big problem. Okay. My prognosis is likely to include things like dementia or Alzheimer's. It's a big problem. if I die, when I die, if it's a result of something that's not service connected, and this goes for everybody that was up there are benefits in the VA system for surviving spouses, for dependent children. If we can't service connect our problem, they are completely shut off. So we leave nothing to help support our families because the government won't admit we were there, won't admit that we were exposed.
Do they also not acknowledge that you were in the military?
No, if they acknowledge we were in the military, our records look like we were on vacation for 4 years or 5 years or whatever time we were
So they just wipe your whole.
there. I did a Freedom of Information Act request for my medical records. My medical records showed what they will give me. I've talked to others and I know my medical records are there. They just won't give me my medical records.
From the VA.
Correct. From the military archives, even not even going through the VA. And what they sent me said I had a pre-enlistment physical, okay, which everybody goes through before you go in, make sure you're physically able to perform the job. Number one. And number two, the second thing was that I had knee surgery because I blew my knee up there on an exercise. I tore my MCL and meniscus. So I had knee surgery. When you're in the military, you get a physical every year, you get dental every year. When you're getting out of the military, you get an exit physical. You have all these things that you go through. In my 6 years, I had 2 events. You can't see because of my goatee, but I gashed open my chin a couple of times and have had stitches. The military gave me the stitches. It's not. I had
So you have
stitches
no
in my
access to that.
Mm-mm. One of my buddies who lives over in Hawaii, who was a cop, he was up there after I was. He got his medical records, and the only thing that wasn't redacted was his name. And it's like 80 pages of everything lined up.
And there's no information of what you guys were doing up there that was necessarily needing of protection. I mean, obviously you have an NDA, you don't talk about what was going on up there, but I mean, you were protecting, you were doing
Yeah, what does plutonium exposure have to do with protecting the stealth fighter or whatever else was going on the range?
So is this just a matter of, I mean, not wanting to be accountable for it? I mean, I've heard you talk about the minutia of what the finance would look like on, on in the DoD defense budget. I mean, if it were to be if that were the money were to come from, I mean, no matter where the money would come from, what you guys were suing for, or is it even considered suing?
No,
It's
it's just
not.
legislative action.
Okay, so and then that would clear you guys for your VA benefits at least. I mean, how do you guys take care of yourselves with all of these health conditions? How are you?
So we can still go to the VA. Now, your VA rating is you have no service connection, or you can have 0 to 100% service connection. And everybody falls somewhere in that range, right? Who knows? So I can go to the VA and get care. The issue is the more disabled you become because of it, the more help you're going to need. Number one. And some of that help isn't available to you. Your basic health care, any vet can go to the VA. But it's when you pass, like the average age on our memorial list right now, we have 539 names on it of people that we know of. The average age is just under 63 years old. So it would be reasonable to say, since the average female in the United States lives to over 80 years old, that they could be left hanging for 20 years because the government won't acknowledge what we did and where we did it.
And your son?
Yeah. And all 4 of my kids, one of them had an issue that was corrected surgically when he was about 6 months old. My second son. Both of my daughters have really significant health issues. And I know they're related to my service for 2 reasons. One, you can go to the National Institute of Health and you can connect the dots there. But anecdotally, what I find is that when I talk to other veterans that served up there, their kids have the same issues as my daughters. And they're really significant to the point that we don't know yet that they're able to have kids. And they're in their 20s and they're both married.
Oh, it makes me
And the
very
reason for them
angry.
that they have issues is because of what I did. And they have huge medical expenses because of what I did. That's what I'm trying to fix, is to make sure that what we leave behind isn't kicked to the curb. And it's not that hard. When the speaker killed what we were working on in the NDAA, they said was going to have a cost of $115 million over 10 years. Let me put that in perspective, what that money equals. So it's $11.5 million a year. Is if you put a decimal and then 7 zeros and then put a 1 and a 3, it's like 13 millionths of the budget for the Department of Defense.
Is that
It
for
is
all of you guys?
minuscule. Yeah, to get all of us so that the military could do what it needed to do to acknowledge that we existed. And then the money for toxic exposure has already been approved through the PACT Act. There's already a fund that the government has set aside to take care of military members that have toxic exposure. So that money has already been appropriated. Because again, we're not some huge number compared to the size of the military, the number of veterans, those that have been exposed to various things in the Gulf War and Vietnam and everywhere else. And we would argue that $115 million is a significant overstatement, because they say, well, the Secretary of the Air Force has to identify everybody that's worked out there. I know that list already exists because the Air Force believes they reasonably believe that I'm going to win. So they've already started and prepared a list. So I don't know what the cost would be there. And the other is to acknowledge and deem NTTR as a location of contamination, which shouldn't be tough because the Department of Energy's already done that.
Yeah, I don't understand how they can keep people going there. It just seems
That's a whole nother thing.
insane.
The DOD tried accusing me of wanting to shut down those two locations. And they said, I don't have a dog in that fight. That's up to you guys. You got to figure that out.
Yeah. I mean, it's just the
I,
obvious.
yeah, exactly. But
And kids that are hearing your story, I mean, I know you were saying that you don't get that much coverage, but I mean, come on. At this point, everybody's an investigator in America because no one believes the
or should
news
be.
anymore. Most
If
of
they're
us.
not, they should be.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
But it's just, if you're going to send people there, you know what you're doing to them. Is it really that big of an ask to say, take care of them?
why even send them there? Forget it. But so this PACT Act, are you guys just one of the groups that are not? Is that actively happening and they're taking care of, say, somebody who, I mean, probably we're too deep into the years for this now, but something like Agent Orange, which, I feel like they're still spraying Agent Orange on us at this point in our lives, but I know that was, I mean, they were probably a part of the PACT. They have been part of the
Yeah, they
PACT
were a
Act.
part of the PACT Act. And here's the government again proving how bad they can be. Vietnam ended in the early 70s. It took till 2022 to acknowledge the Agent Orange and to finally provide the benefits needed to the veterans. So they waited until half of them were dead. It took 50 years.
I've heard you say to Natasha, I keep referencing Natasha. This is her podcast. That you think that they're just trying to wait it out for you guys to be gone.
Yeah. Some of the guys, there's a saying, deny until they die. And it's hard to argue that that's not the case. I add somebody to our memorial list every week.
And then what about there's that young lady who's the daughter who has lost two of her parents now because they were both working on site. I mean, the kids will carry on this fight.
And she's had cancer.
The kid has. She's not a kid. She's probably,
Yeah.
you know.
She's about my age. And her grandfather died from cancer in his 50s from working out there. Both his parents worked out there and they both died in their 50s. And she was the one. Now, they did day trips out there because of where they worked. She did the laundry for everybody. That was like her thing for the family, was to take care of laundry. Well, she's ended up with cancer because you bring that stuff home. I mean, I brought it home in my chrome zone. I also brought it home in my duty bag with all my dirty clothes.
Wow. I mean, so that kind of exposure transferring over to family members. I mean, you said you guys were so your whole family was living on site then.
No, so I would fly up on my Monday and I would come home on my Friday. And my wife lived in Las Vegas. She was a student at UNLV. And I would take off and go to work. And while we were up there, we had dormitories, we had a chow hall, we had a gym.
Was this the man camp? Was this man camp?
Man camp.
Man camp.
Exactly.
Okay, I've heard about man camp.
It's like a dormitory facility on a university.
In plutonium.
Correct. Little extra added spice.
Wow. And that's where these kids are still living when they go up there.
Mm-hmm.
Probably. Or man camp, was it disabled? Was it?
No, I've heard that not much of it is used now. It's not as active as it was when we were up there. But there's people up there every day. There's people at various locations on NTTR every day working. And they still, it's not a dozen people. Let's just say that. It's a fairly significant number of people that work up there.
Oh, it's bigger than 12. I see.
Oh yeah.
And it's still just, doing the same stuff that you guys were doing with, new
right,
stuff.
New technologies.
New tech, right. Are we using any of the technology now that you guys were protecting? Probably, right? You don't want to talk about that stuff. We don't ever have to talk about that stuff. But so what do you think is going to happen in 2027? That's when they said they'd get back to you. Is that correct?
No, my hope is that the bill that we're getting ready to introduce will be passed before the end of the year.
What was the bill you guys had? Was it the 1066?
So we have, in the House, we have HR 1400. In the Senate, we have S 2220. And then soon we'll have another more comprehensive, better bill that will somehow, I think, replace everything else. And the knowledge now within Congress, I spend a week there every month, at least.
You're going back and forth.
Yeah. All the time. I just got back. When the heck did I get back? Last Friday? Yeah, I got back last Friday from being there for a week. Next week, I do some work with the VA. I go to Tampa for a week. Then for filming our documentary, I go to New York on the 7th of March.
You guys are making a documentary.
Yeah, we did a short. If you haven't seen, it's worth seeing. If you saw the thing with Robert, he was in our documentary as well. It's 11 minutes long. I've been all over the country going to film festivals. And
I don't know if I've seen the whole thing. I think I just saw the snippets that The Hill was using.
Yeah, there's a whole thing.
Now, so I can cry some more.
Yeah, that'll work. It's really, really good at that. And now we're doing a full-length documentary that our goal is to get it on the streaming services to tell the story of what happened to us and tell the story of how amazing this group of people is and what they've accomplished. Because these are like to go up there, you got to be like in the top 1% of whatever it is you do to qualify to get there and then be able to get your security clearance.
And the
You know,
fact that you guys have not, like, you've just been so level-headed and clear, and just watching you through the whole thing that I've been paying attention for a couple of months now. Um, I don't know. I can't say that too many people would have the same kind of grace that you have while you're doing this, dealing with, a bunch of disgraceful people. And I'm sure, you have your moments where you lose hope with all of this too. I'm the guy who never loses hope in anything, and then I have those little moments where that voice just starts coming in and nagging at you, and you're like, nope. You sleep on it and pray to God, and the next morning it's like it's a whole new landscape. I feel like we're traversing between dimensions lately sometimes, with all of this stuff, but I guess everything is kind of reaching ahead where people are just, it's like as much as they try to suppress the truth right now, it just keeps seeping out of every corner. I know they're going to use this new technology they have to suppress every single truth that there is, but I think even with that technology, a lot of it's just going to come bleeding through, and we're going to have to grasp onto it as fast and as hard as we possibly can so that we don't forget it. And I think what you said earlier too about not realizing what our power is as individuals and then coming together. Um, because, I don't have very much faith at the top right now. I do have so much faith in mankind and the ones that care, that really do care, that are not addicted to this thing but at the same time with that thing we're getting so much information. um what we do with it, I guess, is going to make the biggest difference, and everybody kind of coming together, which is what you're doing for your pack. And then
yeah,
the kids that are going to come after you, the kids that are there now.
yeah. I don't think the government, when we were uprange, ever had any concept of the internet and social media. There was a time when the military believed that the internet was going to stay in their world only. It would never be something that you or I would sit and have a conversation face to face over computer screens.
Wow.
They never envisioned that. And our ability to share information between one another versus what it was 50 years ago is worlds different. And it doesn't help them. They can use technologies to do things, but they can't stop us from talking. And they can't stop us from getting on the internet to do some research. The only thing that stops people from doing it, is the people themselves. They need to go on and they need to realize these elected officials that get to DC, their number one goal when they get there is to stay there. And if they think that's in question, you have huge influence over them.
Yeah, we don't realize that. You're right. We've all been very a lot of people have been very complacent, but I think that a lot of, what these phones do is keep people, so it catapults some out there into, the stratosphere to understand things better, and then it takes a whole other percentage and just buries them beneath a lot of bullshit.
Yeah.
And then stories like yours are going to get lost because everything then becomes, I don't know, people are very sort of self-involved these days.
Yeah. But then you find Natashas.
You find the what?
Then you find the Natashas, or they
Yes.
find you, and you
Yeah.
get your story out there. I mean, we've had 17,000 news stories. We've had, as far as it's called impressions, right? And there's companies that track this stuff, and we pay a subscription for a company called Cision, who tracks the efficacy of our messaging. We've had 45.5 billion impressions with a B worldwide since we started this, which means how many times have somebody had the opportunity to read, to listen, to somehow be exposed to our story, that it's sitting in front of them, whether they choose to read it or listen to it or watch it, we don't have control over that. But how many times has somebody had the chance to learn about our story? And where we're at right now is we're at 5 times the world's population. So the average person in the world had the opportunity to see this 5 times. Now we know it's not, people in Central Africa aren't paying big attention to what we're doing. So in the United States, people have had dozens of opportunities to learn about us. And we keep pushing that envelope. And when our new legislation comes out, we're going to have another press conference and hopefully do another interview with Natasha. And hopefully, and this is why I say Natasha's a unicorn. I've gone to other media outlets to try to get them to cover us. We've gotten a little bit of coverage from CBS. The other majors won't have anything.
Do you think they're not allowed?
It took Natasha from the time that she recorded, she came out, she had to take vacation to come do our story. So she came out to Vegas for a few days. She brought a crew. She used her holiday vacation to come to my house and interview for 3 days. When she first started all this, it took her 14 months to get her network to run the stories.
Wow. I was wondering why she'd be the only person carrying the story. So she took the story on by herself.
Ah, she took her Christmas vacation with her family to come to our house and do this. I went to Reuters. I got a hold of the news desk in California for Reuters, trying to see if they would write a story on this when I first started it. Wouldn't do it.
Man, back in the 80s and the 90s, everybody was dying for a story to write about anything that was going on. And now nobody can write about anything unless they get their script from the top.
Yeah. And that like Natasha's News Nation was about, we don't want to get in trouble for violating some secret. We don't want to get in the crosshairs. The government's their major news story. It's everybody's major news story every day. And I think they don't want to piss that off. And Natasha kept pushing, and she'd call me every few weeks. And, don't forget about me. I'm still trying. We're going to get this aired. We're going to get this aired. People are going to hear your story. And it went from December of 83 until December of 23 to February of 25 to get them to air it.
Oh, really?
Ah,
That was from the time you shot that.
was December of 23
Oh my God.
until February of 25. That's how long it took her to get her network.
I wonder why they changed their minds, knowing that they too are probably beholden to the bureaucracy.
I think, like she said, they had to go through lawyers and management and all these different people. And in that time, we'd gotten a little more coverage. CBS did a national news story on Memorial Day of 24. Their Eye on America news story was us on Memorial Day. So there had been a little bit more, and maybe that helped give the higher up some level of permission that it was okay to do something.
How do you feel about the military right now?
I love the military. I love the people that serve in. This is going to help all of them. It's not just the unintended consequence. Every law that passes has an unintended consequence. Well, now what's coming in the new legislation is the military is going to have to acknowledge toxic exposure for every single person that ever serves ever again on their DD-214, on their discharge document that says Dave Crete was honorably discharged. There's going to be a checkbox that says, did Dave Crete experience toxic exposure while in the military? So it'll make that undeniable. And that's going to be when our bill passes, that'll be in effect for every single person going forward for an unending period of time, hundreds of years. That's what we're doing.
It's going to be the Crete Act or the Invisible Enemy Act.
And so, what started out as we wanted to help people where we worked on NTTR has turned into this whole big thing that's going to tell the military and the government, you can't do this crap to people anymore. It wasn't okay then. It wasn't okay now. And we're going to make it really hard for you to ever do this again. Because you're going to have to come clean. And what an accomplishment that would be is to make the military change the way they operate. You can have a world of secrecy, but you can't just screw people over and their families and then write them off and ignore that they exist.
In the legislation, it would have them taking care of the families of all people affected.
Yeah,
by toxic.
That's part of it. Is like let's take my son who has the neurofibromatosis. He goes to the doctor. The doctor says, "Why do you have this?" He'll be able to go there and say, "Here's the things that my father was exposed to that caused genetic mutations. This is the whys." That every family member will be able to have that. They'll be able to trace it back to the military, and a goal is to make sure that these things, when the military did this, they end up having to be responsible. So when my son needs his next MRI, the government should take care of that MRI. He shouldn't have to write a check for it because it was their doing. And when they did it, they knew what they were doing. There's never been a penalty to the government for doing what they've done to people. The Tuskegee experiments. There's all kinds of things you can look through history where the government has done testing on people unknowingly and justified it as, well, the juice is worth the squeeze. What we're going to get out of this is worth it. Based on
there's so much of it.
Yeah.
It's
hopefully
insane.
we can make them think twice about doing that ever again.
I mean, yours would have been the most obvious. I mean, there are so many other operations that are just so diabolical. But it's so top secret that it would be, knowing that they're doing these diabolical, strange experimentation on their own people. But you guys were literally just in a sandbox filled with, hazardous waste. And that wasn't the experimentation. I mean, it was, you guys were there to work and do a job. So it's as embarrassed as they may be, and that's why they won't be accountable for it. It goes back to what we said, this happened a long time ago, but yeah, there's going to continue to be contaminated areas, and it just doesn't, to me, it just makes no sense that they don't just take care of it. It's a simple, easy ask for you to have to jump through fucking hoops and do all of this for your family and, for your workers' families as well. It's infuriating to me. You're level-headed. I'm a hot-headed Italian. I'm a mom. And it makes me very angry because, you guys are there doing something for our country and for these people in power. And, we're fighting all these billionaires' wars and creating more technology so that we can do that. And just, your son has nothing to do with this. Your wife has nothing to do with this. And you shouldn't be feeling terrible that you served your country. and hurt your family in the process. It's like, that's not, it's, it is absolutely mind-blowing to me that they can't
Horrible.
just give you what you
It's a,
deserve, which is minute compared to what they have to do out there in the world.
but it's a nothing burger, and
Yeah,
it's an easy win to take care of some folks.
and
And
it's
in a
something
world where
huge
they
for you
like
guys.
easy wins, when first time I testified before the Veterans Affairs Committee, there was a veterans roundtable, and I told them, I said, what's crazy to me is that I have to fight so hard to do something that, as I put it, I said, we're asking to be able to have the same exact benefits for ourselves, for our families, that every other veteran gets. But because I had this crazy security clearance, my family isn't eligible.
Oh,
What does that have to do with anything? We just want to be equal members of the veterans community. Just treat us like you treat everybody else. We're not asking to be special, different, nothing. Just treat us like you treat everybody else. We'll shut up and go away.
well, I will be here with you on the front lines. I don't know. I will be promoting your documentary when it comes out. I don't promote movies that are in the world anymore that I've been in, or TV shows. I don't care about any of that stuff. I'll be promoting that documentary. I'll be promoting Natasha's news show. Um, and you and all your men and your family. Um, it's infuriating to me. I always wish that I just wish there was something that all of us could do, but I guess just be more loud and more proud that we have our voices to say something. I mean, even your buddy there, with the little bit of voice he has left, he's definitely making an impact. Just
I'm
hearing
still
him
fighting.
talking about how he's grateful. Oh man. Yeah.
Puts things in perspective, doesn't it?
Yes, 100%. 100%. Dave, thank you so much for coming
Thank
and
you.
telling your story. My
Thank you for
podcast is
sharing it.
new. It's very new. We don't have the reach yet, but it's a different voice. It's coming from a completely different part of the spectrum of the world that you're in. So hopefully other people will hear it that are like, geez, I think this is a big awakening that we're going through right now in the world, for sure. And it starts with you guys, because you guys are I have the utmost respect for the military. And there's all this stuff around here. Don't mind that. That's just normal because we're always fighting. We're always fighting about something over here. We're not military, but we're big mouths.
Well, I
Anyway.
look forward to getting the link and sharing it with people too.
Okay, it'll be a bit, but I'm happy, and I really will. I'll be following this whole thing, and praying for you guys that you get what you're entitled to.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay. Have a great day, Dave. Thank you.